We have one more day to go and one more spot to fill. Hey everybody, welcome to day number 8, the final day before the grand finals. The first group for today is a Toyota Supra, a Ford GT, and a Chevy. Now that red Ford doesn't appear to be very aerodynamic, particularly because of the top part of that vehicle sticking up. But look at this. They are quickly shutting me up. They're quickly gaining a decent sized lead already. The Toyota Supra is trying to keep up with them, but somehow that Ford is keeping a decent sized lead. I gotta keep reminding myself not to judge a book by its cover, or in this case, a vehicle by its design, because they finished in first without much of an issue at all. We see surprises all the time, and that certainly surprised me a little bit. If there was anybody I expected to finish in first, it was not going to be that one. But they do finish with a 13.73. Still not exactly where you want to be in terms of times. Maybe they can finish a little bit faster, but especially compared to those other three, they were lightning fast. So now they have one win under their belt. They obviously want to try and go for a sweep and possibly not lose a race ever. But we'll have to cross that bridge once we get to it, should we ever do so. They currently have the lead over the Supra, who is trying everything they can to keep up with them, taking advantage of tighter turns. But that Ford just seems to have good control, which can be just as important as speed. Sometimes you could be the fastest vehicle, but if you fly off the track easily, it will spell trouble. And that Ford GT didn't even get to the final stretch. And it looks like the Chevy didn't finish either. There aren't too many instances where two people don't finish. We'll at least be able to see how the Chevy didn't. Oh, it was another instance where they couldn't get over that last turn and tumbled down. I gotta give props to the tenacity of these racers, because we've seen some brutal, absolutely gruesome crashes where they're tumbling down, winding upside down, crashing into each other and what have you, but they still keep racing, and sometimes it doesn't seem to affect them too much. I'm not sure how they do that, but props to them. At this point though, the Ford has 2 wins under their belt. If they get one more, they are guaranteed to be in today's finals with a possible chance at a sweep, and they get it. They get the win that they need to move on automatically to the finals. It's just a matter of who will join them. It looks like it'll be the Toyota Supra at this point, but maybe one of the other two will pull off something that we just do not expect. Yeah, the Ford is just one win away from a sweep and keeping hope alive to be an undefeated racer. If the Ford can actually do that, they will be the 4th and final racer in the grand finals to, at this point, have not lost a single race in this tournament. Which will mean also that half of the people in the grand finals will have not lost a race yet, so it will be interesting to see what happens when they get pitted up against each other. And that Ford just launched themselves like a slingshot around that turn, giving themselves an even bigger lead, and the other 3 are practically nowhere to be seen. I'm honestly surprised about these times, because it looks like the Ford is moving so fast, but they are barely breaking the 13.5 second mark, whereas some of the fastest racers have almost broken the 12.5 second mark. So there are some racers going a full second almost faster than him. But right now the Ford and the Supra are moving on to today's finals. Let's see who joins them in the second group, which could be a Ferrari, a Nissan, another Volkswagen, and a Dodge. This particular Volkswagen appears to be a convertible. The other one was not. It seemed to be a Volkswagen Beetle that had a round edge all the way across the top. But being a convertible, it doesn't look like it's actually helping them, because they are way behind already. Whereas the Nissan and the Dodge are out in front. And the Nissan is actually doing pretty well going into this turn, and the Dodge is somewhat behind them, but here comes the Ferrari. I think the Ferrari may have actually beaten the Dodge to the finish. Those turns can be massive game changers. sometimes you could have a decent sized lead, but if you lose so much speed on the wider turns, it could make it so much harder to keep up that momentum. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was the Dodge in second. Or no, it was. What am I talking about? My apologies, everyone. Then we go into race number 2 here. The Nissan is currently the one with the win. Anyone who beats him at this point will stop them from having a sweep, will stop them from being undefeated, but we will have to see. Yeah, my apologies about that slip-up. The Ferrari and the Dodge are very similar in color, so when they're right next to each other, it's hard to tell which one is which. Nissan is right between them, though. And let's see if I can get this right this time. I think that was the Dodge that finished in first that time, so the Nissan will not get a sweep or a chance at being undefeated. Yeah, I want to say the Ferrari is the slightly slimmer one. And a 14.01, still not great. They gotta step up their game. But the Nissan and the Dodge, I was right that time, thankfully, are tied for first. So neither one will be undefeated. Neither one is guaranteed a spot in the finals after this race. They will have to fight in that 4th race to see who will go into the finals. It is the top 2 here, but only one will have a chance at moving on to the grand finals. The Nissan is currently fighting with the Dodge for that first place spot. The Dodge does take the lead, but the Nissan now has the tighter turn, takes advantage of it. Can he hold on to the lead? He does, with the Dodge finishing right behind him, and the Nissan finished with a 14 flat. And we have yet another non-finisher, that being the Volkswagen. If I had to guess by position, they tumbled. Yeah, almost exactly how other cars have crashed there. It's like they've already counted themselves out at this point, but I'm sure that's not the way they want to go out. So hopefully, for their sake, they will be able to at least finish this race. But they're already kind of wobbling from side to side. That could be because of how small that vehicle is. But right now, the other 3 are fighting for that first place position. The Nissan is out in front with the Dodge right behind him. The Dodge will, I believe, have the tighter turn going into the last stretch, but he's just far enough behind that it doesn't matter, and the Nissan takes the win, finishing with a 13.8. We haven't seen too many racers recently finish under 13.5, which is a problem if they want to go up against some of the other people already in the grand finals. But the Volkswagen did at least finish this time. But it's the Nissan and the Dodge moving on to the finals. So here we go. The Nissan, the Dodge, the Supra, and the Ford. The Ford has been the biggest surprise to me today. And the Ford actually does have a shot at being the 4th and final undefeated racer. They are the only racer today to have not lost a race yet. And they did start out slightly behind, but they have the lead again, and they quickly lose it as I say that. But they are keeping up with the other racers pretty well, and they have the tightest turn here. They're gaining a bit of speed, and they take advantage of that tight turn, finishing in first. Again, still not a great time, but the fact that they haven't lost a race yet is very good. They only need to win 3 more times, and they will make it so that half of the people in the grand finals will have not lost a race yet. Here we go into race number 2. The Ford takes a slight lead, but the Nissan is edging him out slightly. But they have the 2 wider turns, and now it's the Supra out in front, and they're evenly spaced apart. But here comes that Ford, somehow gaining a nice burst of speed, widening the gap between first and second. The Nissan is trying to catch him, but the Ford is gradually expanding how big their lead is, and they finish in first yet again. If they finish one more time, they will guarantee their spot in the grand finals, and then they'll only have one more race after that to try and have to be one of the few racers, to have not lost a race. I know I keep bringing that up, but that's because it's pretty rare that that ever happens, that this many racers will do that. So the fact that we might have 4 will definitely make things interesting in the grand finals. Right now, though, the Dodge and the Nissan are out in front. That Ford is trying to catch them. And so far they do. But the lead they have is not quite as big. The Nissan and the Supra are trying to catch up. It looked like they were going to, but that turn just launched the Ford forward like a rocket, and they finish yet again. So the Ford, finishing in first rather, the Ford is moving on to the grand finals. They have locked in the final spot. It's just a matter of whether or not they will also join the grand finals as an undefeated racer. This one race will decide that. We've seen some people get so close, but then get denied it by another racer, and I'm sure these other 3 are going to do everything they can to try and keep that from happening. But somehow, in that particular stretch, every time, the Ford gains the lead, even if they didn't start with it, and they are in first. But the Ford is right behind him. Well, not the Ford, I'm sorry. The Dodge was right behind him, but the Ford is the one who ultimately takes the win, so they will move on in the grand finals as an undefeated racer, making it so half of the people in the grand finals are currently undefeated. Only one of them will ultimately be able to do that if they can. But we have our roster. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the grand finals.